Well, hello all. How do you like my new stealth bed to be? I'm planning to build it between these trees here. And the trees seem a good distance apart. So if we just fill all this up with soft branches, maybe we'll make ourselves a nice comfy bed to sleep in. I've been adding to my bed. Just look at what a magnificent pile I've got between the posters of my bed. Look at our lovely bed for the night. Here it is. So, here we are. I brought flatbread. Yum yum. Yeah, we've got some egg and mayonnaise, and onion and salt and pepper. That looks all very delicious. We've got a spoon in here. Let's spoon on our topping. It's going to be a little messy, folks, but delicious. This is one of my favorite meals, which is flatbread, egg, flatbread and anything, but in this case, egg and mayonnaise and onion. So, I have this whole forest to myself. The moon will come up at about 8 or 9 o'clock. So it's going to be dark for the first few hours. After sunset. So it will be nice. We'll be able to see some satellites. Looking really forward to it. So I'm becoming a bit of a scatologist, which means someone who looks at droppings of animals. I try to see which animals are around here. And there's a hedgehog, a porcupine. There's lots of porcupine scat. So a scatologist studies the poo of animals, not to be confused with an eschatologist, which I am too. And then there was a pile of daker droppings, which is a kind of a small buck. This poo or scat is about 50 meters from my campsite, and I think it's from a small buck, a daker. And the more we hack this alien vegetation, the more the small buck come back. Because nothing eats this blue gum, which is a native of Australia, except koala bears, and they're none here. We get a bit of honey from blue gums, but it's a total waste of time tree. And it's a fire hazard. So the more we hack and the more we put into our bed, the better the natural fauna recovers. So that's why the grey or common daker is here in this area. Very shy, very uncommon. But I have seen them. You see them especially when the place catches fire, and then they get driven out and are forced to come close to human houses. Well, this is all very delicious. I'm going to have plenty more, but let's have some wine. I'm going to have to use this flask. Now, when one gets older, it's a fault of old men that they want to dwell on their lives and they want to think things through and say, wow, at the end of my life I can ask, well, what influenced me? And maybe there could be a lesson for one or two people. I would say when you're young, you may not know too much. I didn't know very much when I was young. But there were people that had a great influence on my life. I'm thinking of one teacher that I had, what we called it Standard 1 in those days. I was 12 years old. He was an art teacher, and I think he was an English teacher as well. But at the end of the day, when he was tired of teaching, he would just read us kids' books. And he read us Cheaper by the Dozen by Frank Galbraith, something like that. And it's nothing like that movie that Steve Martin was in. That movie didn't follow the book at all. If you're at all interested, read the book by Frank Galbraith. And he wrote it, I think, in 1948. And our teacher used to read it, and that book so influenced my life. It was all about, Frank was a motion study expert. And he would look at, say, a bricklayer, and he'd look at the number of steps that the guy took in laying a brick, and he thought, he takes 12 steps, but I think we could reduce this to 5. And for some reason, that rang just such a bell in my life. I just wanted to, do things efficiently and to find the shortest way of doing any particular project. And in every aspect of my life, I can see that. Obviously, I had a liking for this concept, because I remember I still, like when I have a shower and I dry myself, I always start from my hair and I follow the same pattern. The hair, because as I take the towel and do my hair, it shakes all the water off my body. And then I go down one arm, up the other, and I follow this whole pattern of drying myself so that I only go over one area once. And the same thing with brushing teeth, the same thing with all my jobs, the same thing with everything I've noticed in my life. For example, I would watch a friend of mine tile a house, and he would make love to the tiles, and he'd take hours to lay a tile. Well, it wasn't hours, like half an hour per tile. I just looked at him with incredulity that people are prepared to waste that kind of time. And I've tiled hundreds of square meters of tile. Man, but I watch what he did, and I take the good parts and I reject the bad. For example, you've got to wet both the tile and the surface that you're working on, so that when the two come together, they mesh, and you use your tile trowel. It's got little ridges in it, and then you fiddle with it. And boy, I could lay those tiles in just literally about a minute, whereas, as I say, I was watching other people do it. Now, being efficient comes with, did his tiles in the end maybe look a little better? Maybe, but hardly noticeably, almost unnoticeably. If your tile corners all are at the same height, and there's no sudden rise as you go from one tile, or dip as you go from one tile, then you've done a good enough job. So my motto in life has always been good enough. So I built my own house. I built everything virtually in my house. Did my own plumbing, own electricity, own bricklaying. Well, I got a bricklayer, but I did a lot of bricklaying and a lot of putting all the windows, etc., doors, welded them up. So, but I always did everything as fast as I could, as efficiently as I could, so that at the end of the day, there'd always be that huge satisfaction. I get so much satisfaction out of just seeing a change. Like you get the satisfaction, years a bed wasn't here, and here I've got a bed to sleep on tonight. Oh, how wonderful. In this forest, going to be a almost full moon after 9 o'clock. The forest is going to not be dark and creepy at all because the moon is going to come through. We've been clearing this forest also a little bit. And, it's just going to be absolutely wonderful to be able to see the sky. But as I say, in everything, so even on any job, say I taught for 46 years, I was always trying to look for the most efficient way of teaching. And I'm thinking with AI, just imagine, we spent hours and days and years of our lives setting papers. Can you imagine you tell AI, I want you to set a physical science paper on the following topics: Doppler, Newton's first, second, and third laws, momentum, and let's say light or magnetism, whatever you say. And then it just prints out this paper with a memo and just saves you all that time. Oh my word. That was what I was always striving to do, was trying to get the computer to kick out my papers and memos. And I was getting, at the end of my teaching career, which was a few years ago, I was getting pretty close to that. But I just see the power now of AI is going to be able to just kick out a question paper, and that usually took days and days and days of hard work. And then you got to type it out, then you got to work out the memo. Now it'll do all those things for you. Can you imagine how wonderful it'll make teaching? So all the drudge of setting papers. This wine is nice. It's a mixture of red wine and rosé, a sweet rosé. So it slightly sweetens the red wine. So it's a dry red wine that is now not quite so dry. It's a bit sweet. So AI is the epitome of doing things efficiently. So I'm just loving the thought that AI will be so efficient, because as I say, I've tried to live an efficient life. Now, okay, let's take this idea. And this was maybe taking it really too far, but I could go the whole year and then just study before the exams for a day or two and pass the year. I could basically goof off for the whole year, and then a few days before the exam I would study like crazy, pass the exam, and then a few days later I'd forgotten everything. So that was my efficient way of passing, and as a result I got a pass, but I didn't get great marks. Now that's efficiency. And the same thing with university. They required a 50% pass rate, and I would study just enough to get that 50% pass rate, and I got my BSc that way. Physics, chemistry, botany, zoology, geology, philosophy of science, etc. All of those things I could just do basically following that very efficient principle of I basically did nothing through the year apart from the practicals and the required assignments. And then just before the exam I would come, work like crazy, almost blow my eyes out, because I'd now have to master everything at the end, pass the exam with the least amount of work through the year, and then get my degree. And my only interest was in getting the degree. I mean, then I thought, wow, that was okay. I'm not recommending that, because I would say it's better to really love and enjoy and savor and take your time and do the best effort in, maybe if you're doing a degree. I mean, it took so much time as it was. You'd have lectures in the morning, then you'd have practicals in the afternoon. We were always doing a physics or a chemistry or botany or a zoology practical, dissecting something, performing some chemistry experiment like making polystyrene, or performing some experiment in physics with a diffraction grating or something. So by the time you got home after your morning of lectures, the afternoon of practicals, I sure didn't feel like studying. in the evening. And I thought, wow, you can't steal my whole life at university. But as I say, I took efficiency to the max. And I can see through all my life, whenever somebody says, let's do this, now, instantly my mind thinks, but I think there's a more efficient way we could do it, and that's this. It's almost a bad thing, because if the boss is saying, okay, let's stay at school till an hour after the classes end and do some preparation work, I'm thinking to myself, oh man, it just used to drive me insane to have to stay for an extra hour after you've taught. Say school ended at 2:30, you've got to stay till 3:30 to prepare for tomorrow. No, scrap that, forget that. I just want to go home. I want to get a glass of wine and start living. So that drove me bonkers. So as a result, for the last half of my teaching career, I was what they call a temporary teacher, part-time teacher, and I would come teach my lessons and go. Okay, they pay you a part-time salary, which is less than half of what they paid the regulars, but at least I didn't have the frustration of sitting around doing nothing, there's so many drudge jobs in teaching that I just like, you got to sit and invigilate. That means stare at the kids while they write the exam, or you got to take the register in the morning, or you got to sit, and when a teacher's absent, you've got to do substitution. All those duties just bugged the heck out of me. So I thought, no, let me rather be a part-time teacher and get paid a lower salary, but just have all the time in my life. So it really did bother me that I just thought teaching is just so inefficient. And to make it more efficient for myself, I just taught part-time. I got a lower salary, and then I just learned to live on a lower salary. And so that suited me perfectly. So I just learned to live very efficiently, not waste money, not dry. I basically used a motorbike for the last 20 years of my life. I bought that motorbike so cheap, and it's just had a few clutches that have had to be replaced. And that motorbike was just such an efficient way of saving money. I know I paid 6,000 Rand for it, which is, if you divide that by 20, $300, I suppose, for it. And that was about 16, 17 years ago, and it's been going ever since. And I went many, like 30, 40, probably 40 kilometers a day to school, 25 miles. I would have made no money teaching if I had not had that motorbike, because it was so efficient on fuel. I could go 400 kilometers, 250 miles virtually on 10 liters. It's about a gallon and a half of petrol. So it was so efficient. I could go on holiday, I could go to school, I could work, and my life wasn't impacted by just having to sit around in the afternoons and doing nothing. So I really worked out a system, and I have lived all my life, I would call it living efficiently. And I don't think there are too many other people who have that same obsession that I do to live efficiently. And it came from that book by Frank Gilbreth. Yeah, I think that's his name. Anyway, I can look it up. I want to reread that book. I'm going to download it. It's 1948. It's nearly, 80 years old. Perhaps it's even out of copyright. But that book changed my life. And as I say, having that teacher, Mr. Pryor, who read it to us, he changed my life. So, wow. I'd never had a chance to tell him how much how much he changed and helped me. And that's, I think, the thing with all teachers. You never know as a teacher how many people you've changed or helped, or because virtually none of them come back to you and tell you, wow. But all my teachers were fantastic. I had an English teacher, Mr. Selshop. He was fantastic. I had a physics teacher, Mr. De Villiers. He was fantastic. I had a biology teacher at school, Mr. Buerter. He was fantastic. I had a geography teacher, Miss Hogan. She was fantastic. I had one or two bad teachers, but wow. I mean, what a wonderful thing. They showed such enjoyment of the subjects. I liked all those subjects: physics, biology, geology, not geology, geography, English. I did not like Afrikaans and maths. Those were my other two subjects because I didn't have great Afrikaans and maths teachers. But the efficient way to learn Afrikaans I found was take a cycle through South Africa, which I did in about 1996 or so. I went and cycled 1,700 kilometers, or about 1,000 odd miles up the west coast of South Africa, and you stop in each town for the night and you just talk Afrikaans. What an efficient way to learn a foreign language when you're forced to talk the language. Oh wow, I learned Afrikaans like I never learned at school, and I learned to like the language too. There's always a more efficient way of doing something. Every single thing on earth, there's a more efficient way of doing it. Okay, so this is my bed tonight. Will I discover a more efficient way of doing a bed? I'm going to pump it up. I'm going to just blow it up just now and sleep on it. I don't know if it'll be too dark to show you. But how absolutely wonderful. I mean, even cooking. I'm just thinking cooking. My sister made these cookies. And it's like a little tart with some of the jam that I gave her, which is from a wild plant called Syzygium, a tree that grows. It forms a hedge on my neighbor's side of on the side of our property. The delicious tart. But she also says she always doesn't rub the butter into the flour, etc. She just melts the butter and just stirs it in. So she's also into this efficiency thing. I cook super fast. I can whip up meals in half the time that it takes most people, and I don't know why that is. Okay, I was a cook in the army, and I learned to cut onions and potatoes and peel things very efficiently. But people faff around and just spend so much time cooking. I just whip it out. That meal's cooked in next to no time. I think I do regret never having a pressure cooker, because that is such an efficient way of cooking too, like to tenderize really hard meat. But my sister who lives with us has got a pressure cooker, so I can always go to her and ask her to pressure cook it. So you can take a real piece of roadkill, virtually something as tough as anything, and just cook it in a pressure cooker for an hour, and it's going to be as soft and tender, delicious as anything. Not that I eat roadkill. But that means you can buy the cheapest cuts of lamb and beef. Doesn't matter what they are, when you cook it in a pressure cooker. As I say, I don't have one. They just come, everything comes out tender, just falls off the bone. So that's what I mean by living efficiently and using the least amount of electricity. Like a pressure cooker just uses so little electricity. Anyway, well, those tarts are just delicious. And it's just made from all the people in the neighborhood who have these trees don't use the fruit from the tree for anything, and it's a super fruit. It's like a little olive sized thing, and it looks like purple berry. And you add sugar, you just boil it with sugar for about an hour or half an hour. My jam is also super efficient. I make jam faster than almost anybody. I put the least amount of water in, just cover it to boil it for about half an hour, add sugar, and there's your jam. And it's super fruit. It's a wild berry. No one seems to use it at all in the neighborhood. It just falls off the trees, and it makes the most delicious jam and the most delicious tart. Sort of dark like a blueberry or a mulberry. But that's the efficiency. There's food just going begging in the neighborhood. And I went to the neighbors, someone far down the road. I just carried away buckets and buckets that were falling on the sidewalk. Wow. And I've got it all frozen. And I have an automatic apple peeler, which as you turn it, it skins it and cores it at the same time. Now that's again an example of efficiency. Then I eat the apple or dry it, and then the skin and the core I put into the syzygium jam. That's efficiency. I'm not wasting the apple and the core, because you need the extra pectin for the syzygium. And so I've got all these apples and cores frozen. I've got the syzygium frozen. Anytime I've got a deep freeze full of the stuff. Anytime I want to make jam, I can make it, and I can make it in half an hour. So I hope that's just giving you an idea of how to live efficiently. Just some ideas in every aspect, every job you're going to do, be it making jam, be it probably stealth camping or whatever. There is just a tool that does it better, or there's an efficient way to do it. And it just pleases me, it chuffs me so much to be able to do something efficiently. So, let's blow up our airbed while it's still light enough to see. Let's lower this. I can see that is going to be so comfortable. This truly is just too comfortable for words. Let's just give a panoramic view. As the light begins to fade, here was my path in. Forest, 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 everywhere. 360, now we're facing north. This is kind of blocked and hemmed in. I really don't think anyone's going to come past here. There we're facing east, south. You can see there's cars in a road. West, north. Well, I went to bed with no moon, and the moon has risen now. The bed was perfectly comfortable, slept nicely, and the forest is so absolutely dark you can see nothing. But now with the moon, it's beginning to get a bit lighter. I'd be interested to know how comfortable my bed would be without this air mattress, because it's perfectly comfortable with the air mattress. When one sees the moon, I think of things like this. The moon is the exact same size, or it appears to be in the sky, as the sun. That's when when there's an eclipse, solar eclipse, the moon exactly blocks out the sun. I mean, imagine what a coincidence that is. I don't think it's coincidental. The scriptures talk about there's a glory of the sun and the moon and the stars, and the glory of the sun, I think, refers to the Father. The glory of the moon refers to the Son, Jesus, and the stars refers to us when we are made spirit beings. So, just as the moon rules the night, so Christ has to rule over the creation until everything is put down, and then he hands over the creation to the Father. And it's interesting how the moon rules the night, and the night comes first. So Christ rules, and then he hands, after the millennium, he hands everything over to the Father. And then comes the day part, when the Son will rule the day, or the Father will rule the day from New Jerusalem. I just tend to think of things like that while I'm stealth camping out here. And, songs like When We've Been There 10,000 Years. What's it? How does it go? When we've been there 10,000 years. Something bright shining as the sun. Well, we're not going to shine like the sun at all. We're not bright shining as the sun. Only the Father has the glory of the sun. We're going to be having the glory of the little stars, varying amounts of tiny glory. It's been a wonderful night, and it is a wonderful night. That's been the night so far. There is the moon shining through the trees.